Welcome back in, everybody, to Thursday's edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN down the shore. Mike, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing well. Good to see you, Mike. We haven't talked. Well, you and I talk every day, but we haven't talked on this show. What's the feeling you get from your audience? Where are they with this Eagles team? Up or down? Now that we're at officially the end of training camp.
Up or down is interesting. We had like a big kumbaya yesterday on my show. You know, I was off for 10 days, so I kind of missed the Baltimore and New England game. I just got back Monday. Was my
You didn't miss much, Mike.
No. I'll tell you, the distraction of the Phillies and what's going on over there is certainly, you know, something here. But we asked a question, and I think I had you on Monday and asked about which coordinator will make a bigger impact on this team. And a lot of people went with Kellen Moore. I think it ended up being like 70-30 split.
People love offense. It's insanity, right? By the way, which I told you.
And then yesterday we were looking at, you know, a lot of different power rankings around. And I said, look, they're in the top 5 pretty much at every power ranking. Are we not giving this team enough credit for their ceiling of what they should be? Like, should we be entering the year less trepidatious and being like, this is a Super Bowl team? And I think people feel trepidatious still based on the final 7-game sample of last year, that they're unwilling to just take their guard down and say, you know what? This team is really good. This is a really good team. I don't think people are there yet. I think they want to see something tangible that makes them feel that this team is really good. So I feel that the word would be a little trepidatious about this team.
Yeah, I think it goes. I think it's about the collapse last year, Mike, because I you know, think about it. If they're 10-1 this year, people are going to say, well, they were 10-1 last year. Yeah. I until they get over that. Yeah, I think there's going to be a certain amount of trepidation.
Yeah, and I don't know
most people. I think
that's
most
fair,
people
by the way.
realize
that's fair.
Yeah, I don't know if it's fair. Just that was so rare. Like, I don't think you say, "Oh, that's going to happen again."
Right, but
well, the interesting part is, and I brought the Phillies up, is they're going through a streak right now where people are trying to figure out: is it the bullpen? Is it the pitching? Is it, you know, the offense is cold? Well, it's Rob Thompson's fault. Like, there is a disconnect between the issue with the Phillies, similar to what happened with the Eagles. No one can really definitively say that's why. You know, I think the Eagles told you, we think our coordinators weren't strong enough. We went out and replaced the coordinators, definitively said that was an issue for us. They're no longer here. And then, of course, you know, they added some pieces. But I think they're telling you, we went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago with really strong coordinators. We're going to go back to that. We're going to get 2 strong coordinators. We went with 2 inexperienced guys, and it didn't work. We're going to go back to what got us there. So I think the Eagles kind of identified what they thought the problem was, but I think the fans still were kind of like, what the heck happened? It was such an odd thing.
Yeah. And I don't even think they know. I don't even think they
maybe
know.
At least it appears that there's something there, right?
Well, yeah, I mean they've made it clear. You're right, Mike. You look at actions, not words, and they made it clear what the problem was. And in their mind, what the problem was with the coordinators. But you bring up an interesting thing, and I call it the pendulum effect. I already said that. And they go to the veteran coordinators. You know, Vic's been around since the 40s, and Kellen's been doing it for a long time, even though he's a young guy. But I mean, and you mentioned the other part. They had good coordinators. Well, some people thought they had good coordinators, at least one good coordinator. But I will say this, Mike. They were both inexperienced.
Yeah.
When they got here.
Yeah, you know, Britton Covey at the Super Bowl had told me, you know, he said, I think we probably would have been better off with a more experienced, you know, play caller or coordinator, somebody who had no, that's a tough one, though, because I still, you know, that whole situation, it's a whole nother show in itself. Is Brian Johnson is the coordinator of an offense that he doesn't run, they're not his plays.
I know.
Who succeeds in that role? I mean, hey, here's my playbook. Call my plays for me.
Shane Steichen succeeded.
All right. So Shane Steichen succeeded in that role. Well, Brian Johnson, obviously, it's not like to me, that's a tough spot to be in. Call my plays.
Yeah.
How do you guy based on that?
Head coaches, most offensive head coaches call their own plays. So,
right.
And most of them have coordinators. So it's just a different style of job. But you're right. I mean, most guys are going to call plays and that's why, a lot of people don't like CEO coaches because they're worried about losing the play calling. Hey, but yeah, Mike, I've said play calling's so overrated. It's just ridiculous. I mean, first of all, it always, in good times, in bad times, in different times, average times, mediocre times, whatever times, it's always the players first. Always, always. Now, yeah, coaching in football is more important than the other sports. I don't think there's any question about that. And they can have a larger impact. Vic talked about that. That's one of the reasons he's a big baseball guy. And we asked him early on, why don't you get involved in baseball? He's like, he was a coach and he was coaching different sports when he was young. And he was like, you have more of an impact in football. So it's more interesting to me. So they do have more of an impact than other sports. But at the end of the day, and you saw it with Bill Belichick at the end, he can be the best coach in the history of the world. And if you don't have players, you're not going to win. And you know that even on the youth level.
Yeah, we say that in every sport. I laugh because in Philly, we love to fall back to it's Rob Thompson's fault. It's Doc Rivers' fault. It's Brett Brown's fault. And I always say, look, those guys have a small hand in it, but they are low on my list. The football coach is higher on the list, but still players first. Greg Popovich was universally the best coach in the NBA. It wasn't even a question. Who's the best coach in the NBA? Greg Popovich. Well, then you took Tim Duncan and Tony Parker and that crew away from him. His name doesn't come up very often anymore when you ask who the best coaches in the NBA.
He's still probably one of the best coaches.
Right.
But you can't tell because
you don't have the players.
Win.
Now,
yeah.
In football, I think the coach does, but there's a lot of football coaches who have won, and you don't think of them as great coaches. Brian Billick, he won a Super Bowl and never returned to the. Nobody hired him again. He vanished, just went away. Like
Barry Switzer, I would say.
Barry Switzer won a Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
Look, I definitely think getting the new coordinators in here should make this team more consistent. The defense last year, the last 7 weeks of the year was you never saw anything like it. It was just so bad. There had to be so many issues on that side of the ball internally of what was happening. The messaging, was just horrendous. You never saw anything like it. The secondary was so bad. Teams were just getting plods and chunks of yards. You shouldn't see that as much anymore. The offense, we talk about it all the time. They were still a top 10 offense, but I contend that they never had a game where you're like, wow, this is a well-oiled machine. Like, this is just, how are you going to stop this team? And that's what you thought going into the year. Brown and Smith and Goddard, and then they went and got DeAndre Swift. Well, now you have Saquon Barkley. How are you going to stop this offense should be the question going into every single week. And I think you're going to get back to that.
Agreed, Mike Gill. We'll see what ends up happening with that. You talk about the defense and how bad they were down the stretch last year. I think we're all excited for Vic Fangio and what he can bring. But, Mike, 16 practices deep in training camp now. Training camp officially in the rear view, at least from our point of view. You think they got enough guys in this defense? You think they're good enough on the defensive side of the ball to be what they need to be this year for this team to compete for a Super Bowl?
I have questions about the pass rush. I wasn't a big fan of the swap. Look, Hassan Reddick's production is going to be tough to duplicate. Can Bryce Huff replace Reddick, or is it going to take multiple people to get there? Now, much like I'll go back to the Phillies, they got off to this rip-roaring start where they were on pace to win 114 games. Why? You had multiple guys in the Cy Young race. You had multiple relievers make the All-Star game. They came out of nowhere. Matt Strahm, Jeff Hoffman, you didn't think they were going to be All-Stars. Who on the Eagles on the defensive side of the ball is going to be someone you didn't think they were going to be? And if that happens, then yeah, I think their defense has a chance. But without that happening, the expectations going in, I don't know. What's Nolan Smith? Is he a guy who can actually get to the quarterback, pressure him, be a factor? Can Bryce Huff be a replacement, a suitable enough replacement, or even a better player than what Hassan Reddick was? The linebackers, John, you came on Monday and waxed poetically about Nakobe Dean. Now you got everybody all excited. Thanks for that. And Ross Tucker had his little comment yesterday saying, "Oh, we shouldn't even be worried about the linebackers anymore. They're really good." I'm like,
yeah, I'm not going down Ross's avenue.
Ross
I told you that.
Right there. He went Eagle Homer there for sure.
Yeah. So what are those linebackers? Is there a steady Eddie in that linebacking core? And I say steady Eddie. I think TJ Edwards was better than a steady Eddie, but is there a guy in that linebacking core that can really pull this whole defense together? I think that's what Edwards and White did such a good job a couple of years ago. They pulled the whole thing together. They weren't playmakers. They weren't making like interceptions and sacks. They just pulled everything together. They did their job, and that team got to a Super Bowl. I don't know if I can expect that from this defense and the linebackers. And then, at the corners, you got Rodgers, who hasn't played football in a year. He's had a great camp from all accounts and done everything. You've got two young rookies out there. Is that other side from Darius? And by the way, Darius Slay, is he going to be the guy who has the year where he takes a step back all of a sudden? He's starting to get up there at an age where at a position where age is not your friend. So I think there's just too many questions on that side of the ball to think that the defense is going to be able to be a really good defense. But the potential is there. No question about it.
I hear you about Slay, because anytime you see a corner at 33, you start to say, the descent is coming, and it is coming. But I got to tell you, man, he just yesterday, I mean, he's so smart, such a smart football player, so savvy, completely baited Jalen Hurts into that first interception. I mean, it was the classic. He's done it so many times. I've seen him at practice. He will literally bait the quarterback and just sit and wait, and you can see it develop. And that's what he did. And it was a late throw over the middle, and bang, he's there for the interception. He's a guy who I think when he's gone, people will start to realize, wow, that guy was pretty good. And people in Detroit knew it after he left. I think people in Philadelphia are going to realize it. But you're right about the 33 aspect of it. To me, it's interesting. We were talking to Rodgers this week. He had mentioned the biggest issue about sitting out, was his weight. He got down under 180 pounds.
How do you lose weight by not working? Give me that one.
He's a cornerback. I know people like you and I can't understand it, but he's a cornerback, and he was a young man. He's a very slight guy to begin with. And that's my concern about Isaiah Rodgers. And that's why everybody looks at him and projects him into the slot, because he's so small. How is he going to hold up outside against these big, monstrous receivers that everybody seems to have outside the numbers in the NFL these days? That's my concern about Isaiah Rodgers. He can play, but I don't know if he can hold up long term because of the size issues.
Well, I think I brought it up with you yesterday is, Avonte Maddox was a pretty good slot player on this team. I mean, when he played, he was good. He just couldn't stay on the field. And the fact that they have pretty much taken him out of the mix at that position, I guess tells you how comfortable they are with that other group of guys. Because, quite frankly, if Maddox is healthy, he was pretty good in the slot.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. And that's about, they drafted Quinyon, they drafted Cooper. So, I mean, they're going to play him. Now, hopefully they develop, and everything's been positive with Quinyon Mitchell. That doesn't mean there's not going to be issues. He's got the good cornerback mentality. He seems to forget bad reps quickly and goes back, and he wants to compete against A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. All good indications from Quinyon Mitchell. But he's going to get beat. And, you know, people are going to say, oh, we got beat, Mike Gill. They're going to call you up and text you and say, what's going on? Quinyon Mitchell got beat by insert name of great receiver. Gets beat every day at practice. That's the nature of cornerback. Are you going to be able to come back from that, have the short memory?
Well, and then I guess the other thing we can throw into the mix in this conversation is, did Cooper DeJean missing all that time set him back so much that he's not going to be a big enough factor right away?
I'll tell you. I don't worry about the missing the time aspect nearly as much as he's playing a new position, which I think nobody realizes, because all the talk about Cooper DeJean was, oh, he's going to be a slot, he's going to be a safety, and all he played at Iowa was outside corner, and that's what he's used to. 90+% of his snaps were at outside corner, and that's what the Eagles scouted him as. And now they want to play him in the slot. And the other day when he was out there against Britton Covey, the short area quickness guy, it wasn't good. It was not good. Those little jitterbugs in the middle of the field was not good.
Yeah.
And he's not used to it. He's a big guy for a corner. So that I'm more worried about projecting him to that particular position than the hamstring. I think the hamstring's going to be a blip on the radar. I mean, he's a smart guy.
Those things are tough.
Yeah, well, they're tough, and he's a fast guy as well. They're always tough for fast guys, but he's smart. I mean, from a mental standpoint, I don't think it's an issue for him catching up and doing all that stuff. But he's learning a new position, and I think most people don't realize that. He's barely played it.
We'll see what Cooper DeJean does. Mike, I want to ask you about the historic training camp of Jalen Hurts, 305 completion or attempts with no interception. What's your expectation for Jalen Hurts coming into the year, Mike?
Historic.
The more historic part is the guy who actually watched all 300+ passes and like took note of that and didn't miss one.
That's historic. Elliot, right? Shout out to Elliot.
Got to give Elliot credit, Mike.
Oh, Elliot, I'm sorry, I was away. I'm like out of.
Well, we love to joke about it, but I laugh because every show I listen to right now talks about the dang training camp.
Yeah, but there's a group that take it seriously, and you know we make fun of that group at least.
Well, it became a thing, definitely. I just, you watch how many in a row is it?
305, Mike.
Right. So he saw all Elliott Shore-Parks saw all 305 throws. I think that's the more historic number. No, it's pretty impressive.
I can tell you, no, Elliott will pay attention to every pass, and he will come to it, because that's the thing about training camp. Like the Eagles actually have a big video board, and they actually have the replays of the plays now, which is the first year they've done that. But there's a lot of times you can't see certain things. There's a lot of times a referee will blow a play dead, and it might be a sack. A lot of people were saying yesterday his interception should have been a sack, which would wipe out the interception if they had called the sack. So there's a lot of, sometimes there was a couple times when people thought Johnny Wilson caught the football, and all of a sudden Michael Clay's behind him going, oh no, he bobbled that. And a lot of people didn't notice that. And they count that as a completion.
Well, that's what I mean. I haven't been to camp since the Nova. I was at Lehigh was the last time I was at a camp. So up there just seems like it would be so hard to like. There's so much distraction going on. Are you watching?
It is. It's extremely hard. And yeah, Elliot, if he misses a play, he'll go up to people. He'll go up to me. He'll go up to other people and say, "What happened there? Did you see it? What?" So he does the best job possible. But, and I say it all the time, Elliot's a great guy. Love him as a friend. It's stupid. It's stupid.
Look, 305 passes. If there was something missed in there, God bless him. But Sirianni said something yesterday that I said a lot in 2022, which is he's making all the right decisions. Yeah. In 2022, it felt like every play he made the right read, on an RPO. If he was supposed to hand it off to Sanders, he handed it to Sanders. If he was supposed to pull it from Sanders, he pulled it from Sanders and ran it himself. If he was supposed to pull it and run, he ran. If he was supposed to pull it and throw, he found the right receiver. It felt that he made the right read and decision almost every single play the entire season. Like it was uncanny that we were like, man, this guy makes the right decision every single time. Last year, it felt like he made the wrong decision every time. Hey, you could have handed it off to him and said you held it yourself. You could have pulled it and ran. Maybe he doesn't want to run. Oh, he pulled it and there was a guy open and he missed him. It was just so clunky compared to the year before, where it was such a well-oiled machine. So Sirianni says yesterday, hey, he's making all the right decisions. The offense, look, I have high expectations for the offense and Jalen. I think we're going to see a big year from both. I think this offense is going to be a special offense. I had a guy who texted my show. I wish he left his name. I'd give him more credit, but he didn't. And he said, listen, this offense, it shouldn't be one of the top 5 in the league. This should be one of a historic offense. We should be talking about like a historic offense.
That to me is so unrealistic.
Well, listen, with the personnel on this team, it might not be like, okay, are they the greatest show on turf? Are they one of these like all-timers? Why not? You got Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, a really, really good offensive line, a guy who was second in the MVP award. Why shouldn't you have an offense that's special?
Because
what's holding
them back?
It's
not, and that's Xander asked that at the start of the show. It's not like that's not the ceiling. And I mentioned the greatest show on turf. That might be the ceiling. But historic is historic, Mike. That doesn't happen every year. So many things, the stars have to align. That's what I'm saying. If you have those expectations, as your texter did, yeah, you got to temper it a little bit.
That's fair. Look, to say that you have to be a historic offense, otherwise you're a failure, I understand. Those expectations are probably unattainable. But I asked the question, with the personnel on this offense, why should we not think that that's a possibility?
Oh, it's a ceiling that, but that's like the 70 sack season, right? You and I would have that discussion. I don't care if Jonathan Gannon came back and they didn't have the issues and they were able to have the same group and they brought the exact same group back. They were not getting 70 sacks again.
No.
They were not.
Listen, last year when they played the 49ers, at that point, what were you, 10-1 or 10-2 entering that game? And, you got this matchup with the Niners. And everybody talks about the Niners offense and how smooth and crisp it looks. And I said, if you were to ask somebody to pick 2 receivers for their team, would you take Ayuk and Stebo or Smith and Brown? I mean, you might take the other 2, but it's not definitive. No spot on the roster was there a definitive player on San Francisco where you would say maybe Trent Williams and obviously Christian McCaffrey. But now you have Barkley. You still might take McCaffrey, but there is no definitive guy where you're like, I'm taking miles between the 2 players, right?
No, I would take AJ and Devontae before I would take.
There you go. And the Eagles' offensive line, probably player for
overall better. Yeah, player for players better.
Just as good, if not better. So San Francisco's offense runs way smoother last year than Philly's.
Yeah, well, they have a better coach. They have the best play caller in the business. And that, guess what? Kellen Moore's not going to be Kyle Shanahan. Not the best head coach. Best, people talk about schemer. I shouldn't have said play caller. Schemer, I would say. He's got his guys prepared. He's better than everybody else. He's the big Fangio of offense. Everybody tries to copy him. He's the best in the business.
Yeah.
And it's about preparation more than anything else.
Well, and that's why my point is last year, the team had the talent to be there with a San Francisco offensively. They did not have the full Monty, which would be the preparation, the play calling, all of that. Now you're hoping that Moore closes that gap so that you look more like that than what you looked like last year.
Yeah, and I think the ceiling is the number one offense in the NFL. They have the potential to be the number one offense in the NFL. But to expect that, yeah, then you're just setting yourself up for disappointment because so many things have to go right.
Yeah. Well, listen, we set expectations based on the talent that you have. And if you don't meet them, that means the talent didn't get there. This offense has the talent that it should be one of the top 2 offenses in the league. Who has better overall talent than what this crew has?
Yeah, there's a few teams in the conversation, like
Detroit. I like Detroit. I think Detroit's got really good.
Detroit's in the conversation. San Francisco's obviously in the conversation. Kansas City's in the conversation.
The Jets had a better offensive line. That's a pretty good team.
The Jets evidently destroyed the Giants season in a joint practice. Everybody's jumping off bridges who covers the Giants and follows the Giants. The Jets are going to be good if Aaron is healthy.
Yep.
They're going to be very good.
Miami's got some good skill players. Their offensive line's okay.
Yeah, there's a group of teams that are powerful offensively that could have, those types of years. But Miami's a good example. Like Miami's offensive success, and there's a lot of it, is very hollow to me. In the stats that they seem like a front running team. Like when everything's going well, they're chucking the football down the field to Tyreek. They're scoring 70 points. And the minute there's a little bit of adversity, they kind of fall apart. So there's different levels. Like, do you have the potential to score 70 points? They do. Can the Eagles score 70 points? I don't know if they're that explosive. People are talking about they got to check it down. Well, if you're checking it down, you're not slinging a football and running up the score with Tyreek Hill. So it's kind of like depending on, what you want. What's your favorite flavor of offense?
All right. I'm in the I'll be I know to say 30 points, like 28.8 would be my number a week.
That's big.
That's big, but I like it. I think that's a pretty good number.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, to say someone's going to
very good 30. Offense, just a matter of how good. That's what I say. It's a very good offense, just a matter of how good.
Yep.
And Kellen Moore's under those expectations, so he's got a lot of expectations to deal with. Just like Mike Gill does every day at Mike Gill Show, back from vacation, 97.3 The Sports Bash. Every afternoon, 2 to 6. What are Kaplan, Mosher, and DeCecco? What are they most excited about? What are they worried about on your way out the door?
We talked a lot yesterday. I mean, I've been away for 10 days, so I haven't heard a lot of the after game and training camp stuff. But yesterday you and I kind of went through 53 potentials. Mosher and I talked a little bit more about the coordinators. He's concerned about the defense, the linebackers still. He said, look, as many people have, they have one of the worst linebacking rooms in the league. I'll talk to Andrew today. I haven't talked to him in 2 weeks. And Adam and I on Tuesday did more of a overview of what's going on in the division. So, but yeah, the defense seems to be the question still of the linebackers. Mosher also talked about the pass rush. Are they getting consistent pass rush? Where's that coming from? Because I brought that up, I said, I don't know that are we not talking enough about where's this consistent pass rush coming from? Because when they got the 70 sacks, I know you're not a big sack guy. Okay. They got a lot of pressure and it caused turnovers. Last year, not enough pressure, not enough turnovers. Are they getting enough pressure, forget sacks, to cause the turnovers that they were able to get 2 years ago? And I don't know where that's coming from consistently. Maybe here and there. I don't know. I'm not hearing enough about what Bryce Huff's role is going to be. Is he going to have a big role in this defense? Nolan Smith seems to be the guy everybody likes, but I don't know what kind of roles he's going to have. So those are some of the things that we've been kind of looking at on the defensive side of the ball with those guys. But 4 o'clock, football at 4.
Good stuff, Mike Gill. Appreciate you being here on this Thursday, normally a Wednesday appearance from you, but we got a Thursday one out of you today. We appreciate you doing it. You always improve our show. Thanks, Mike. We'll talk to you soon. All right, man.
All right, guys. See ya.
Thanks, Mike.
There's Mike Gill joining us on Birds 365. Good stuff from Mike Gill. We'll get another commercial break. We have Brandon Lee Gouton coming up in hour number 2. So a good show plan. We'll hit our next break. I want to encourage everybody to hit that like button. We're at 72 likes, 350 in the chat. Come on, everybody. I need some likes for Johnny Mack, who worked hard down at training camp for us to give us all the input, all the knowledge, and all the updates on this football team. So smash that like button. Let's try and get to 150 likes today. John, before I hit the break, by the way, I wanted to hit this. A super chat we got from Daniel Bigelow. I didn't have a chance to bring it up with Mike, but we'll hit it now. Daniel says, last year we won those 10 games by 1 score. Very shaky. I will have trepidation unless we are winning these games by 15 to 20 points. Daniel, I think you're going to have trepidation all year long.
This is the NFL, man. Yeah. It's not with Xander. We'll give deference to Xander. It's not Alabama Furman. Most NFL teams have pretty good players. And a lot of games are going to be 1-score games, especially with obviously the 2-point conversion now mixed in. So you got to be, as you mentioned, 2-score games late. Even the great teams don't have a ton of them. Obviously they have more, but the whole league is defined on parity. So if you go back to the Super Bowl season, early, people forget week 1, they almost lost at Ford Field to a bad Detroit team. Now, I remember talking to Jody about that. I said, that's a tough spot because it's going to be loud. It was extremely loud. I remember how loud that game was. People in Detroit get excited early in the season, then they tend to get crappy, and they would, back then, they would kind of waver, so you wanted to play them late. I would always tell Jody that. He was like, sure enough, they were holding on for dear life, and they were able to win that game. The Jacksonville game, they were down 2 scores in that game. You remember that bad weather game with and Trevor Lawrence kind of fell apart late. They went out to Arizona. They should have lost that game. That was the backup. That was the battle of the backup kickers. The Eagles had the better backup kicker, Cameron Dicker, the kicker versus Matt Amendola.
I actually think he's still in the league now, John, isn't he?
Yeah. He was at the Chargers doing a good job. They had the better backup kicker. Cowboys game was close. They lost to the Commanders. Indianapolis, remember the Indianapolis game? They were losing that game, and that was the 4th quarter. Jalen Hurts put him on his shoulders and ran the football down. I think they won that game by a point, 17-16. Green Bay was 1 touchdown. Obviously they blew out the Giants. That Chicago game in that freezing Soldier Field where Jalen Hurts got hurt, that was a close game. Ended up being a close game. Dallas, obviously, New Orleans, they lost, and the Giants was 1. I mean, people don't remember. It ain't easy in this league. That's the Super Bowl season.
Yeah. Daniel, I love you, brother. I appreciate the super chat, but I wouldn't expect to win most of the games by 15 to 20 points this year. But appreciate your super chat. Appreciate your viewership, Daniel. I see you in here all the time. So we appreciate your support of the channel. And let's hope the Eagles have a good year this year. Let's get to our commercial break. We'll have another segment, and then we'll have BLG in hour number 2. Stay tuned, everybody, on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.